I would like to remind everybody we've got our first big campaign coming up in January.
So things are going crazy around here for the last couple weeks. As many of you guys know, we are entering the last we're tracking down the last issues in the 5.8 build, hoping to get it to go live soon. We don't have a specific time. We got to get these last kind of things tapped down. And then I'm really excited to get you guys in this build. I think it's going to be incredibly cool. This is the first time the actual game that we pitched back in the Kickstarter days really starts to come together. Like, up until now, I look at it as we've been building kind of a house brick by brick, but it didn't have a roof, it didn't have plumbing, like there were key pieces missing. This is the build where enough pieces come together that you can actually get in and really play a Throne War. Like, it's the first time it lives up to the promise of the name Throne War. So we thought it would be great at the end of the year to get everybody kind of one last chance to get on live and wave and say hello to everybody right before we have all this excitement hitting with the new version. So have you talked about what we're going to be doing today? All the different people that are coming on and what they're going to be doing?
No, I haven't, but I can. But before that, like immediately when I mentioned that about the first campaign hitting in January, people were going, January? So can you clear up the confusion about what's going to happen when we put 5.8 on live?
Yeah. So let me go through this. It is a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
So here's I did a post on this. So if it's still confusing after you're done watching this video, go check out last week's news post because it covers it. So what I needed to, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah. I have lost all concept of days and weeks because we've been trying to get this build done.
Me too.
So basically what I tried to do was separate out two different things that we haven't really drawn a distinction between before. So we had the 5.8 milestone, right? We always use internal numbers that mean very little to anybody externally, except for the hardest core guys, which are probably in the channel. But we colloquially, called this thing the first campaign milestone. Like, that's because it included all of the features and functionality and content that we wanted to be able to do our first actual Throne War campaigns. That doesn't mean, though, that we wanted it to come up into live and immediately the moment it comes up, we actually start the first game, right? It's like building a soccer stadium, and then the moment you kind of put in the last screw on a chair, you start the first game. No, that's not what we meant.
Well, it also is, you would be jumping straight from building the soccer stadium to World Cup.
To World Cup, exactly. So that was too big of a jump to make in a single moment. So what we needed to do, the stages are basically, we needed to test this thing at a detail level, and we do that like we always do on our test server. We bring it up, we take it down, we wipe it when we need to. We basically put vendors on that give out free resources and weapons. We turn up the speed of training to like 10x. Like, the goal there clearly is not to make it a playable experience. It's to get adequate testing on the individual pieces of all the things, of which there are thousands and thousands and thousands in any given build. So the next piece we need, now that we're basically to the end of that process, the next piece we need is to actually test some soccer matches. Like, we need to test the whole thing as it holds together with the actual resource gathering and the actual crafting and the actual timing and all of that kind of stuff. So before we can jump all the way to World Cup, I want to run a few of those, and that's what's going to happen next. Is we're going to get this thing to go from our test server to our live server, and we'll actually try and play some games. So I think that's going to be awesome. Like, it's totally cool and super exciting.
It is exciting.
But I do want to say that there will probably be some issues. I mean, this is the first time we've ever gotten together, so we need to kind of do a trial run. Like restaurants do this, right? When they do an opening night, is they'll typically let people come in and eat for free because they know it's always bumpy for the first couple days. You know, that's what I'm expecting here too. Is we're going to run some campaigns. We'll start with pretty short campaigns. They may be a couple days. I fully expect that we're going to need a round of balancing on the point scoring, how much the different locations are worth when you claim them. And my expectation is we'll be off initially badly enough that pretty quickly one faction will pull ahead of the other two so much that the other two will just say, well, this game is over, and they'll want to quit, right? Traditional Uncle Bob scenario is going to happen because we've never tried it before, right? So doing some really short campaigns will give us a chance to do that balancing so that we can actually start to get closer to a real game. And then after this, and I'm not going to give any dates on this, but we're going to do our actual first sanctioned campaign, and that's going to be really exciting because that's where we're going to put a focus on it. That's where we're going to actually.
That's when we want the war stories and all that.
Yeah, so we're going to shine a spotlight on you guys, the players, and we're going to actually make that thing obviously a really cool. Special throne war. It's kind of that is our World Cup at that point. The first one. It'll still be bumpy. We're still pre-alpha, but it'll be the first time we actually put focus on it and try that out. It's not really an esport. There is nothing else that it's equivalent to, right? But it's kind of the closest equivalent I've got is to say it's sort of like our esport tournament-y kind of thing. So more information on that will be coming soon. Not quite ready to talk about it yet. We've got enough on our plate just getting over this hump, which is getting from test to live.
Yeah, and then one point that I wanted to make, we've heard from so many people in the community that, excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold.
It's fine. Cough all over. Nobody cares.
I'm not coughing on you.
We're not in a small little room or anything. We'll be fine.
Hey, my cooties are great cooties to catch. Anyway, so we've heard from a lot of people that, their guilds are kind of hanging on the sidelines, waiting to see what's going to happen. And this is the moment that they've been waiting for. And as we're talking about these sanctioned campaigns, that's not the time you want to start playing. When 5.8 starts on live, that's when you want to start. You want to get these skirmishes in now. You want to learn the game. You want to help us, like Todd was talking about, we were going to have to do some balancing. Your feedback is critical.
Well, your feedback's critical too, and quite frankly, I mean, you don't have to get in early, but if you want to be competitive, it's probably not a bad idea, right?
The more you know about how to play.
That said, we're specifically trying to make it clear that we're going to consider one the thing that has the bragging rights, and the others not as much. So this will be an interesting transition period for us. I mean, we've never been through this, but frankly, no other game has ever been through this. What we're doing is that weird and unique. So. I do say it's going to be, there will be some mistakes. In fact, this week, for example, in advance of us getting this thing over to test, we took the test environment down, and a bunch of people read that as, the new one's coming up, and it's going to be live. I hadn't gotten my update yet out about sanctioned campaigns, so a lot of people thought that was the firing trigger for sanctioned campaigns are coming, and they're coming right now. So I do want to apologize to that, by the way, for miscommunication on our part. That was not our intent. The good piece of that, if there is a silver lining when I screw up, there rarely is a silver lining. Usually I just screw up. But if there is one, is it gave us a really nice reminder of how many people are waiting and how many people are passionate about this because they got angry at me, and anger is passion. So and understandably so. So I do apologize for the miscommunication. But the really cool thing of it is it showed me that we've had people who we may not have seen in the games or on the forums for 2 years. They haven't gone away. They're just waiting.
Yes.
Some patiently, some impatiently, but they're just waiting. They're waiting for this experience because there's nothing else like it in the market.
And that's
really cool.
Yes.
So thank you guys for that. Even though at the same time I felt bad and I was like, yeah, they've got a really good point. I was also like, hey, they still really love us. That's really cool. They're still really excited, and that's kind of awesome.
Right. And so we also know now that we need to make sure that you guys do get adequate, clear messaging for when it's coming up.
Yeah, so we'll do a better job of that. We're transitioning into it, so apologies and thank you for your patience.
Yeah, it's awesome to know that people are, planning their lives around this kind of stuff. It's kind of scary.
It's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. Awesome responsibility for us to make sure that you're taking your time off in a way that's meaningful for you.
Well, and that's actually a really key point. If I could just expand on that, is you use the word awesome responsibility, and I've always seen this game that way to me. So a lot of you guys know, I had other games in the market. I could continue making other games. This game for me was a labor of love. It's something that I've wanted to go back and do since the Shadowbane days. So this game was never about, hey, let's just go. I mean, if we just wanted to do a game, we could have gone and gotten an intellectual property that was big, and I mean, we could have done that.
Yeah.
I wanted to make this game, and I wanted to make this game for you guys. So thank you for being patient. I know it's taking longer than we would like. However, it's because I'm trying to make it as great as it can be. I'm not just trying to rush it out. So,
all right,
we're close.
Will we get representation of mats and mobs on map as on 5.7?
That is a question for Todd.
That's a Todd
In
question.
5.8, no.
No.
We're going to go back. We've got more work to do on the map. I mean, we had a lot of effort this time just to get the new dynamic world maps actually up and running. And I'm glad they're in. They're awesome. It's a great first pass. But we concentrated this time on making sure the strategic locations were there and that they would light up as hot spots when they were under attack. That was the main primary thing that we had to get done this time. We're going to go back and do another pass over it because Melissa and I were talking yesterday about where it ended up and how it looks. And we've got some ideas to make it look even cooler.
That map is really impressive. She did a great job on that. And I always get excited when I jump into a new zone at the beginning of a campaign. There's nothing lit up yet. And you can start watching all the capture points marching across the map as the factions from each gate come into the world and start capturing stuff to get their points going.
What's the current plan? Will we see maps in multiple campaigns, or will each campaign be completely new generated? That is from X. Give yourself a real name if you want to be called out. I'm just going to say.
So right now, if you see the cluster map behind me, you'll notice that some of those circles are larger and some of them are smaller. And that's because the size of those worlds is slightly different from each other. Whenever we generate a map, it's totally different. Aside from the parcels used in it, the arrangement of the parcels and the arrangement of all the resources is just totally different.
So I set a goal for this milestone to try and not reuse maps from campaign to campaign.
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet. Like there are still some pieces that are not completely automated. Mostly the rune gate setups, right? So we're moving in that direction though, and by launch, that's absolutely the goal, is that every campaign is completely unique.
What is your mission statement on separating yourself from other MMOs?
Do you want to do it? Or do you want me to do it?
You can go for it, but it's Throne War.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's the Throne War. We want to create an MMO. There are a lot of MMOs out there that let you recreate kind of the feeling of Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, right? The traditional hero's journey. WoW style. I go on narratives, and there's another short story, and I go on that. It's just a linear narrative game. We don't want to do that at all. We want our game to feel more like you're playing out a season of Game of Thrones. And so to do that, it required some things that are completely different than any other game you're going to find out there. One is, instead of WoW-style servers, where I've got one server and then another server, and they're inherently just carbon copies of each other, every campaign server that we have, we call them campaign servers, is completely unique. Like the not just what players are there, but the actual maps, the continents, the zones, where the mountains are, and the cities, and the ruins, and the roads, and the valleys, all of that stuff is completely unique, right? The other thing is that they're time limited. It's not a planet side style tug of war where I take this thing today and then next week you take it back
dog chasing the tail,
right?
basically.
And it's just, instead it's like, hey, this campaign, this server, this entire like solar system almost is only going to exist for the next 3 months. And at the end of that time, one team, either the faction or guild, is going to emerge victorious, and they're going to win, and everybody else is going to lose. So that's just a fundamentally different concept, and it's so different, in fact, that it's hard to get across to people how much those changes are so fundamentally different that it really changes the nature of the entire game.
Well, you didn't even talk about the design changes that we plan on implementing as this as well.
Right.
Because right now, that was just environments and worlds he was talking about.
Right.
When we start taking away metals and woods and things like that, what happens when it's only Ganetians versus centaurs?
What Blair's getting at is, because each of these campaign servers is unique, that means the rules can be unique. The maps can be unique. And we can even change, like, what are the looting rules? What's the difficulty? What's the rarity of the resources? What's the quality of the resources? We have been spending the last couple years building a baseline of tools to be able to now do variant stuff. We haven't, and this, like, literally this build is the first time we're pulling that stuff together into a playable experience. So the replayability of all the variations from one campaign to the next, that won't even be apparent really now. That'll only be apparent as we go forward and we start to create variants and different rule sets.
But we've been focusing so much on the maps and the environments and not the actual game design rules.
Right, you're right.
Because we've just been trying to stand them up.
Question from Durnthal. When can we expect changes to harvesting so that you don't have to cripple your combat ability to harvest?
So, 6-0.
Yeah.
Look at that. I've already talked with a lot of people about removing the weapon mastery disciplines because we don't need them anymore.
Yeah, now that we have promotion
classes, the weapon mastery was kind of a quarter step towards that diversity, but we have it now in the promotion classes. So the plan was to remove those and replace them with basically taking the current majors and creating a subcategory of each. There's combat crafting.
Major disciplines.
Major
Just
disciplines
in case somebody... I can't believe somebody would not know all of our internal terminology, but obviously not everybody does. So we have a subclassing system called disciplines, and you can attach disciplines to your character, and it lets you do things like, you know, crafting and harvesting, or other really like archery is a great example of one.
You can take a non-archer character.
I can take a knight who just has melee powers. I can give him archery, and it gives him a range tray and a bow slot and an ammo slot. And now you're a knight who's also an archer
and a couple bow powers. But yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So the disciplines basically are our subclassing. In 6.0, the plan is to take the majors, of which you're currently allowed to have 2, and break them into a combat crafting bucket and a harvesting bucket, and then allow players to take 2 harvesting ones and 2 crafting or combat ones. So that way everyone will have more equal access to harvesting, and as a harvester you will be able to have 2 combat disciplines and defend yourself.
But we do have role specialization between combat and crafting.
Yes. So when you specialize your character, that is the big choice. Not can I go get stuff? It's what can I do with stuff or fight stuff.
And we're moving the recipes primarily to those disciplines as well. So by slotting in a discipline, now I've opened up this. And I would really like, I don't know if we'll have time before launch, but I'd really like to even go back and put in racial crafting recipes as well, so that we can do the dwarven blacksmith or the elven blade crafter. I think that would be really cool.
That's a tool we have. It's just,
it's a tool we have, and there's a question of, it's always a question of, thematically I love it, narrative I love it. Do I really want to limit stuff? Because now if I want to be really good at it, if dwarves are the best crafters, then I can't be anything but a dwarf.
Then everyone is forced to play dwarf.
So finding a nice way to balance those two, where we get the narrative, but it doesn't become a you must do this decision, we'll have to figure that out. We haven't really worked through it yet, so we'll have to sit down and have some conversations. If we can find a way to do it, I'm happy to do it. Don't know if we can. In fact, if you guys have some ideas of how we could skin that, I'd be more than happy to take your feedback, because it's going to be something we're going to have to talk about pretty soon here.
Yeah, but the tendrils to this whole system are currently in the talent tree. So you see the discipline node, and then there's 3 nodes off of it. Those will be dynamically populated by the things that are currently on the discipline.
Yeah, that's
so
really
for
cool.
Archery, the 3 powers will get broken out into those nodes. Some stats will get broken out. For the crafting, you'll envision a whole tree coming down when you socket that thing in
which
there.
is really cool.
So it will have probably 9 nodes when
you can actually see, that's why on the trees, which are generally, well, I guess I should probably go this way, left and right, they have those branching up and down, because then they can grow up or grow down, and we can make those variable length. The other thing is a lesson that we basically took from Shadowbane, because it worked really well then, and I still like it, I think it's cool, is we give you disciplines, and those disciplines give you additional things to buy, but we do not give you additional points to spend. So it's a choice for players of going deep or going wide. So if I want to take a bunch of disciplines and I want to actually invest in those disciplines, I can do that, but I'm using those points that otherwise I could have spent in my base class. So if I choose not to do that, I can just specialize in my base class, and I'll be more effective as a champion or more effective as a knight than somebody who decided to go a little bit wider. I think that's really cool. I've always liked that as an approach.
Yeah, I think it's going to work out great.
I told myself yesterday when I was setting up all the stuff for the stream that I was going to put a warning that if anybody said Frostweaver, I was going to ban them from our Twitch channel for life.
Yeah, you can't really do that.
Yeah.
That's not an appropriate response to asking about a class that we promised and just haven't gotten to yet.
I know, but it was, so yeah, Frostweaver, there are people who...
Yeah, we've had the Frostweaver design for a long time, but again...
I know.
My life in 5.8 has been talents.
Yeah.
Right, and I think we implemented 600 talent nodes across all the classes.
Yeah.
There was a substantial amount of work there, and it was like, do we going to work on the new class, or are we going to work on the talent system?
Well, and then we pulled out the class and race passive skill trees, which meant you had to go do a rebalance, right? Pulling a lot of that stuff to the talent trees, but also then requiring you to do some rebalance of the profession tree as well. So there was a lot, and also getting the entire strategy game up and running. That took a little bit of work too.
Right.
So yes, I know she's coming. We didn't cut it. We didn't cut the class. It is absolutely coming.
It's not that we don't care. It's what he said. Why do you hate the Frostweaver?
It just happened to be the one that required work that we hadn't gotten to yet. That's really the answer. So.
And I actually stood the Frostweaver up as far as the model in the class. It's just there's no data in there. Okay. I wanted to test one power to see if engineering had actually given us what we wanted with that, and then now she's just waiting for full-on implementation. So we'll see that in 6.0.
This is really the hard part. This is the hardest part of the project, I think. In the beginning, you can, it's still, you've got time and you've got money and you can do everything, and you talk about all the crazy stuff that you're going to do. It's going to be amazing. That's the easy part, right? That's when it's all fun and everybody and the audience is super excited because it's brand new and it's fun to think about. Now's the hard part, right? When you get to the end and you have to actually make hard choices about what's in and what's out, and you don't have time to kick the can on problems that you've been, putting off because they're really challenging and you don't quite know how to fix them.
Well, a lot of stuff, kind of sort of works, and you go, okay, kind of sort of works, next. But now everything has to work right.
Yeah, I can't just kind of sort of anymore,
it has to
right?
be finished.
So
finishing is always the hard part.
We need to shift our gears from 80% working on new stuff, 20% working on bugs and polish, to eventually 20% new stuff, 80% bugs and polish, and then
to the
0% new stuff. But it's an MMO. There'll always be some new stuff.
Well, it's new stuff we're going to do post-launch.
Yeah. We'll have some people that'll start working on our first update. Before we launch, we'll have some people working on first post-launch update.
What's really important for the backers, I think, and for our future customers that don't even know about us, is we need a starting point, right? It's not a finish, it's a starting point.
Right, absolutely.
And the starting point has to be pretty rock solid. So that's what we're trying to get to now. Let's get to a rock solid starting point so that we can really, like any live game, start adding the stuff that you guys want more. Then it's not as much about our imagination as it is about how you guys are driving the game.
So we have a lot of questions about VIP.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about VIP?
Yeah, you should buy a VIP.
So we need to come back. I want to give a good answer on this. So I want to sit down and actually walk through it and say, here's what VIP is going to give. So there's a balance point that we need to hit, and we need to hit it perfectly on. We need to make sure VIP is valuable, people want it, but at the same time we don't want it to give even the whiff of pay to win. So that is really important to us. We've actually gone around and around on this over the last couple of years. We've listened to you guys, and if we say, well, we don't think that's pay to win, but our users, you guys come back and say, well, we think it's on the line, okay, well then we're going to go with your definition, because this is your game. This is not our game. So ultimately we want to make you guys happy. So we have some ideas there. We'll come out pretty soon. We just need to do it. We've been so wrapped up in trying to get this build out. We haven't come out and done it. You can clearly tell we're moving in the direction, though, because we've already made some of the changes. But we need to do that probably between now and alpha, which is coming soon. Yeah. We're going to have to come out and explain that, and hopefully you guys will like what we come up with. And if not, tell us, and then we'll adjust. I mean, that's the thing. It's a dialogue.
That's the one thing about this particular development cycle for us is you guys have been a big part of, driving us one direction or the other. Yeah. Because when you yell loud enough and we actually go through it logically and go, hard to argue with that. We better frickin' fix it.
Yeah. So actually, that's one thing that I would like to. I'd love to see if we could figure out a way to do is if we could tag the patch notes with which user found this or which user suggested the fix to it. It would be kind of staggering. I bet you guys would find that at least half of the things in there.
I don't want a 53rd person.
Right. Yeah, you're right. It would be a full-time job.
I'd love to do more of that, reflecting back to the audience
what you are actually doing. I think it may seem like, even though we try really, really hard to be very transparent and communicate constantly, it probably seems still like we're a little off in a tower, and we're really not. That's what's funny is we bring you guys up in our design meetings enough that we actually talk about you by your handles, and it feels like an extension of our design team. So
absolutely, yeah, that does happen a lot. Some of you are mentioned for better reasons than others. But everybody serves a purpose. And that's a good segue into this question from Umix, who says, Todd and Gordon, what are your favorite parts of the community?
Favorite parts of the community?
Favorite part of the community.
So I actually really appreciate that that I can get measured design feedback from people. That is, and I love to engage on those conversations. It's just really hard because there's so many, right? There's so much noise. So, but I do really appreciate being able to, you know, bring up an idea and say, here's what I'm thinking. And then I get, you know, very, very well thought out and thorough responses. And that's really, really cool. It's also just
speaking of the Dev Partner Forum, though, which is a closed forum.
Yeah. Well, no, not just there. I get feedback like that on Twitter. I get feedback like that through social media all the time. I've got other channels.
What's your Twitter
like
again?
Mine, J. Todd Coleman.
Yeah, everybody send your design ideas to J. Todd
Everything is, yeah, it's all J. Todd Coleman. Well, those are 140 characters, I guess 280 now. So
well, no, but then they're really terse game ideas,
yeah.
which is good.
But I'll get people that also will tweet a link to me or just send me a note. So anyway, there's all sorts of channels, right, that I get that feedback from. I also really appreciate it's not very often that I get a chance to actually meet players face to face, right? It's usually like at Gamescom or something like that, or another conference. But that's actually really cool too. It's really cool to see when you have a guild that has decided they're going to make Crowfall their home, at least for a while. And that's kind of all I can ask, right? I can only ask that they give it a shot. That's very fulfilling as well.
People often ask us about open beta. We do not have plans for an open beta. There will be a closed beta. You have to register on our website to get into beta. Get into beta. There won't just be a...
And at some point, we'll close those registrations. And when we have enough people for beta, we're done.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
we want, quality feedback from people who are engaged with us.